give you a little background, my name is Nicole First. I have been in construction for almost 30 years now. I did new construction with real estate and built and designed houses, and then moved to remodeling because it's more 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever the hours are than the other one. And I had young kids at the time, so needed to make a change. So I've been doing this a long time. I've made my fair share of challenges I've come across. So I try to bring those in only because they're things that legitimately, when you do this and you're doing it yourself, that you might run into. I mean, so how to avoid them is kind of one of the things. And I always bring up what it costs because I think people get a little bit shocked. So the Realtors magazine does a mid-major remodel, which means that they're taking down the drywall off the walls. That's what they consider a mid-major remodel. They do include appliances in here, but they say, the Realtor magazine, says the average in Minneapolis is $66,000. Does every kitchen that we do cost $66,000? No. Right before everybody walked in, I had a previous client roll in, and we just did an update to their kitchen. We used their existing cabinets and just made some changes. So you don't need to spend that much as a rule. So if people know that they're going to kind of go down this path of remodeling, they always say, well, where do I start? And most people start with cabinetry, which is not a bad place to get kind of the concept. But if you really are going to make a plan, you need to start with appliances because there isn't much standard anymore. It used to be a stove was always this, which that stayed pretty consistent. Dishwasher, that's about the only one that has stayed somewhat. The plumbing is different, though, for different dishwashers. So if somebody picks, like the drawers, there's a drawer dishwasher, it needs to be plumbed differently, and it's good to know ahead of time. So I always have people start with appliances. I kind of made kind of a list, on that sheet of kind of what you do. But if people have to ask me trends, some of the things that I do point out it is a nice looking trend is, first of all, a counter depth refrigerator. They do cost more, but they do make a big difference in design. Because if it's right at that front entry of a doorway and you're coming out, it's a 7-inch difference between most of these refrigerators. If it's not counter depth, that's a big difference. 7 inches in a walkway is a big deal. I also really love, especially in small spaces, if you can, again, it's a budget thing. This is why I had you start here, and we can kind of adjust later, is a paneled refrigerator where they're built in. So we were a little bit tight on space on this one. So normally refrigerators are 36 inches. This one is actually only 24. So the opening is 26. So we were able to gain some space and have it be built in, but it's an expensive, But it does help. So ovens and cooktops, most people go again with a 30-inch, but there are people that really cook and want that 36. You got to adjust everything. And I'm going to touch on hood vents only because this has kind of become a hot commodity. If we look on some of these websites, and I kind of put some of them up on the top, like House, if you go on there and you kind of do some shopping on there, everything in a kitchen, they show these big, huge hood vents, which are gorgeous. But there are options. So there's two things. The code requirements only is that you can only have 300 CFM, which means it can only suck 300 cubic feet per minute. If you go over that, you have to have makeup air. The last 2 makeup airs that we have done are between $3,500 to $4,000. So the hood vent, although it may not cost any more than a regular one, because it has more than 300, just increased your budget huge. If you didn't do the makeup air, 1, you wouldn't be meeting code, but 2, it would be, so any moisture that's on the outside would be like sucking into your walls, and that's where we get mold, and that's the reason for it. It's like you're backdrafting the house. I mean, it's pulling everything in because they're so powerful. So just stay at the 300 and you'll be fine. The other thing I love about hood vents is to do more of if you don't want the big hood vent, again, you're not required to have a hood vent. Do you know that? As long as you have 30 inches of clearance, you are not required to have a hood vent. So there's some crazy codes out there, and this is one that they don't have, which I think maybe should be, but I really love these liners. So this is a liner. So you're taking, I sat through the kitchen before us, and they had actually taken a regular cabinet and pushed the liner up. So when you looked at the wall, all you saw was cabinetry with the cooktop, but there actually was a hood vent hidden in there, which I thought was a cute idea. I actually haven't done that one, so I liked it. But you can make it more look cabinetry built in. It doesn't cost more money than a regular hood vent, and it gives it a much more finished look. But if you're short on space, the microwave is always going to be your backup option. And I like it. But if you didn't make any requests and you didn't change anything, the height of a microwave, they're all different. Again, that's why I say start there, because it'll change kind of what you do. If you never said anything, they would put it even with this, with the bottom of the cabinets. That only gives you 18 inches here. Now, I do cook, so to some people it might be wouldn't care, but 18 inches with a big pot, I have to slide everything out to be able to get at it. So I usually use 24 as my dimension from that point so that you can get more space in there. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. But if you're not a huge cook and it doesn't matter, 18 is where it's going to end up. But the heights are very different, significantly different. So a little heads up. Let's see. The other thing with microwaves, which goes back to the appliances, I'm kind of skipping backwards, is now we used to only have really a couple of options, but now there seems to be more. Like the drawer is a great option if you don't have a lot of uppers and you end up with a big island. It's a great spot. You know, the drawer allows you to put it in different places. If you build it into an upper cabinet, I don't know if I have a really good example, but the problem is this is 24 inches deep, and these typically are only 12 inches deep. So you need to adjust the cabinet to make it look right, otherwise you end up with a weird, or they put a shelf, which is, it works, but it's not ideal, I guess. So my point, start with appliances to go forward. Cabinetry, I could do a whole thing on just cabinetry, because there are so many out there. But I'll give you some of the highlights / things that I run into. Wood species, all across the board. And I just was visiting earlier before it started, and they were thinking of maybe doing a taupe cabinet, which I would, we've seen so many white cabinets for so long, and I think putting some color into some of these cabinets, if you're not going to do a wood, great idea. We are having a trend to go back to wood. I'm going to give everybody the heads up. I think there'll still be painted pieces to a kitchen, you know, to give it that color and that pop. You know, I'm trying to always think forward. But there is a trend to go back to wood just because the paint comes with a little bit of maintenance. You know, in the long run it chips and some things happen to it. But I do think wood, and one, you know, I always try to predict the woods too. So the hot woods right now, I mean, we still use maple, we still use some cherry every once in a while. Cherry darkens kind of to that red, so you gotta like that red color. But white oak with a paste finish, not a like varnish finish, so it stays white. Red oak is what you see on the floors, and it kind of has a red tint. White oak kind of looks like maple, but it has the grain of oak, which people like still. The other one would be, and I can see this one coming, is walnut. It's readily available. It hasn't been. It runs the same price as around cherry, to give you kind of a price point. But you wouldn't have to do a whole kitchen in walnut, do one section in walnut, depending on the layout, obviously. Here's the other one. So this is what they call, this isn't a great picture, but this is what they call a full overlay cabinet, where the edges come very close to this, like that. It's a great look because you don't get a reveal. I'll show you what a reveal looks like. This is a reveal, so you can see where there's like a space in between and a space to the sides. That would be what you would standardly find in the marketplace. And that's even custom cabinets, that makes the big difference. So if you were to do the full overlay, here's the good and bads. If you have two doors that go together, like if this door is open and you have another door here, like in an upper, they will not open. They will hit each other. There's no room for them to move. If people like that look, I recommend, again, this is kind of a full overlay, but this is more of an insert. So where the door goes back into the cabinet, because you don't run into the two doors running into each other, but it gives you that flat look versus this look. This is what we do a lot, only because of price point and a few other reasons. But there is what they call an inset door. So then here's my recommendation. Doors, typical uppers are only 12 inches deep. If you do an inset door, you lose another 1.25 inches moving that door back into there. So now a plate doesn't fit. Now, I would think that a cabinet maker would tell you that, but you need to increase them and go to 14 for the uppers. So they have to get deeper. Does that make sense? Otherwise, they don't work. And I say this only because probably I've ordered them and they don't work, and guess who paid to replace them? So again, it's my customize them. Literally go through your whole kitchen. How much Tupperware do you have? How many big appliances do we have? How much of everything do we have? And get the cabinets to match each of them. There's so much customization available, whether you did a box cabinet, you know, even something from, I hate to say the words Home Depot and Lowe's and whatever else, but they do exist. You know, the pull-out pantries, if you don't have enough room for a whole pantry, a pull-out pantry isn't a bad deal. That was only 12 inches. I'll show you one that was 9. Those corners, most people offer a corner. Again, this is custom, but we actually had more space to the stove on this side than we did this side. So it's an odd shape, but it worked. And you didn't have some goofy, lazy Susan. And there wouldn't have been enough on the left side. It would have just been dead space otherwise. So it's good use of space. This is a pot and pan that we've been doing. Everybody has a different way that they like to hold their pots and pans. Recycling, every kitchen pretty much has the recycling and the trash. This is the one that was 9 inches. The only other cabinet you can do there is like a trays in 9 inches. There isn't much else out there. This is the double drawers. So instead of having a bunch of drawers, if it works for what you have, you can double up with only having one door on the front so it gets less busy. Another pantry, dead space, wine's always an option. And I'm sure you've seen this too, because this is how this one was, where there's a closet. You know, you come in this back door, these are Minneapolis houses typically, come in the closet, and there's, you know, a little tiny broom closet that's taken up a ton of space. Because once you take out all the walls of like a closet and make it into cabinetry and make it part of the kitchen, makes the kitchen look bigger, plus you don't have all that framing. I mean, you're gaining 8 inches just by getting rid of that. So, you know, it's, you know, in the planning process, you're like, can I gain space from anywhere? And we talked again briefly a little bit, and she asked about taking down walls. I'm always, like, take down the walls if you can. There's obviously a cost to do that, but it does make a big difference. But then if it comes down to it, here's kind of how I like if I'm sitting down with somebody and we're deciding, okay, this, I'm going to use round numbers, is $2,000 to take down this wall. Is it worth it? Well, what do we gain? If you don't gain anything, you're not going to gain extra cabinetry. You're not going to gain something. If you're not gaining anything for it, I don't say spend the money. But there has to be more pros to taking down this wall, you know, to make that kind of decision. You got to kind of, because sometimes there just isn't any benefit to it. More customization. This is only a 12-inch drawer. They don't have to be deep if you don't have the space. You know, you can alter them. I don't know why. We must have a lot of people drinking lately, but this has been like the hot item is because we've been kind of doing beverage areas, you know, in kitchens, but is having one that holds like the bottles and wine, one that would hold like utensils, and then, you know, having a space for chargers has been another one. Big drawers that have chargers built into them. It's like it runs on the inside of it, and it's just got one USB, and then it actually has like you can plug stuff in, and it's a drawer, and we actually wire it from behind. It's got a little arm, whatever, but they're all out there. Any questions on cabinets? Because I kind of went through it really quick. Anything? Nothing? All right, so I'll move on to tops, because this is the other one people always ask me. The million different kinds of tops that are available out there. They all have pluses and minuses. They all have a different price point. Do I like one over the other? The two that we do the most popular, granite. What I love about granite is that it's a natural product. I'm always kind of a sucker for the real stuff. And it tells a story. You know, if you go find a big, huge slab and you know you're going to have a big, a piece that's going to look like this, pick on that slab where you want that to be, because that's kind of, you know, your point. But you get kind of some waves, and you get a story told with granite, which you don't get with quartz. So, when we go shopping, people either go one way or the other. Granted, it's usually a little bit busier because, it has a pattern to it. Cambria is another quartz product. I do think that they probably have duplicated the veining of granite, probably the closest, but they're also going to be the most expensive product. So we use this name brand. There's a million colors, but it's called Q Quartz. And I think I wrote it in there. MSI is where we shop it. It's not who makes our countertops, but it's where we get the slabs from is MSI. Have you been there at all? It's a good source. Anyway, Q Quartz has a good price point. It runs between $50 to $90 a square foot for us to install this, which is pretty reasonable. Compared to Cambria, we'll start at about 80 and go to 110. So there's a big kitchen, big dollars difference. But some people love Cambria. I just did my mom's boyfriend's place, and he didn't even have an option. Like, it was going to be Cambria. It didn't matter what it looked like even. So some people just want the real thing. So, and we did one in, I can't remember what city, but north up there, and she was like, nope, it's going to be Cambria, nothing else. So MSI, I think I wrote it in there somewhere, but MSI is the showroom, and it's located in Plymouth. And you can go in there, and they've got granite, and they have quartz. They are the supplier to that quartz. Now, they don't fabricate. You got to have somebody else make them, but if you need to look at some options, it's not a bad place to go. They also have marble. I love marble, but it does etch, so it's going to come with some maintenance, or you got to be comfortable with the patina of it. There's a new one called Quartzite that's out. It's more readily available. The prices come down. It used to be really expensive. It's a little softer, but they are using it for countertops. So that's always a good, it's really pretty. It's got a little depth. It almost looks like crystallized a little bit. I don't know. The other new one, soapstone's been around for a while. That is, it's very pretty too. It's a natural material. But porcelain now, they're making slabs, and they're making countertops out of it. And it looks like marble. It's shiny. It looks really pretty. There's only 2 fabricators right now in town that'll do it, though. It's real thin, so you got to be, you don't want to it's just not anybody could do it. But that one is a brand new one, and that is actually showing at MSI also. So you can kind of see what it looks like. So again, it would be like a porcelain tile, which would be your best, your hardest of the tiles. If you drop something, could it chip? Yeah, but it could. So would quartz, so would granite. So in the scenario of like quartz and granite, they come in and just put like a filler in. It's a type of material, if that happens. Sometimes it happens by a sink, people chip it. So it'll run like a porcelain, so it would take heat great. But can it chip? Sure. And then you probably have to just fill it in with something. Did I hit them all? Does anybody have any questions on tops? So thank you for asking. Laminate is a great option, and that's come a long way. That's come a long way from what it used to be. And they are great. I mean, do they take heat? Not usually. But they're a great price point. People really want that undermount sink, and that's really hard to do with laminate. It can be done, but it's very expensive, so it's usually not cost effective. But you have to do a top mount kind of sink scenario, but if you're okay with that, laminate is a good option. It's a good, sometimes it just needs to be done. And it is one that if later on in life you decide you want to upgrade, you can upgrade still. You can make that change. That's not true of everything. So that's soapstone up on the top, which is gorgeous material. That's granite right there. So backsplashes. I feel like this is always kind of that little candy at the end, like it's kind of that part that kind of finishes it off. And we don't usually have a ton of square footage, unless it's a huge kitchen. You probably have 10, and it's 1.5 feet. You've got 15 square feet of tile that you have to buy. It's not a ton. So, you could go and you could do a basic subway tile. I think that's a beautiful look too. It's very classic. Maybe change up the grout, get a little bit darker grout just so it actually shows a little bit. Otherwise it kind of gets lost unless you got something else going on. But don't be afraid to spend a little money. Again, we're talking 15 square feet. So if we give an allowance of 20, which is our typical allowance for a backsplash tile, and you want to spend 30, you know, the backsplash putting it up doesn't change. It's only the material that changes. So it's worth spending some cash on. And I love that, you know, these are all different. So this is just your basic travertine, been around for a million years, but just different styles and different patterns, you know, which I think kind of makes it pop. This is actually full-on stone. They were like this thick. They were so thick. I didn't think they were going to stick on the walls. That one. And then just stripes, you know, just trying to change it up. Just watch your height. If you do use two different tiles, the height differences in some of these tiles will get you a weird corner sometimes. So for that one, we had to take the dots and put them on, it's called Ditra, so it's like a foam material to get them to the height of the other tiles, you know, so that you didn't have this indented thing, or you got to use pencils, or you got to use something to make that barrier. A couple more. Again, just there's definitely a trend for these bigger tiles. This was done probably about 8 years ago, but some bigger tiles, not so many tiles, not so much mosaics. All right, I'm just going to make sure that I'm hitting this all. Any questions on backsplashes? Tile. Oh, and I did put some tile, like where I go typically to shop, where I find the most. Yeah, so like some different options for you as far as places to go. So what we kind of, you know, I don't know if you're kind of following this, but you know, you pick the appliances and you kind of go to cabinets, because usually people in their mind have a budget. So let's just say I go visit somebody and they say we're going to spend $25,000 without appliances. So then I kind of know where we're kind of going to head down the fact. So if you kind of start to put the pieces together and actually give them an amount, it doesn't have any surprises, especially if you're doing it yourself and don't have like a guaranteed price at the end. But you can kind of, you know, break it down along the way. And although you don't necessarily have to be locked into all of these, you know, right out of the get-go, maybe cabinetry and appliances, but you can pick a backsplash later. But if there's something that you're really thinking that you want to do, then you want to kind of make sure that all the materials will come together cleanly, because the materials are so different and how they come together is a little bit different. Lighting. I think this is probably one of the most underrated parts of a kitchen remodel that make the difference of night and day. And I always say think of it in layers. So you'll have ceiling lights up on the top, whether that's a regular ceiling light, could be a you know, depending on how high your ceilings are, chandelier. It could be recessed lights. There's new disc lights, LED lights, that if you have attic space above it, recessed lights can be very expensive because they need to be an insulated box. Or if it's right over a sink, we don't have the trusses come and there's no room to get a recessed light up in there. They have a disc light. It's an LED light. And from a distance, they look like a recessed light. But they're actually a fixture sitting on top of the ceiling. So they work great in basements too, not that we're in basements, but you got all that duct work, and we don't have anywhere to put those recessed lights, so they're the option. It's kind of how I think they started. But think of, like, start at the top, and I say overlight if you can, because you can always put it on a dimmer. And then you kind of have the under cabinet, which becomes your task lighting. I think under cabinet makes the difference between one kitchen to another. And it's not free, I get it. There's two different types. There's the strip lights. It comes like a little tape that you kind of tape up in there. Have you guys seen those? And you can have a little cover that goes over them, which I think is it kind of takes the light and kind of shoots it a little, so it's not so little dots that you see. You can put it on the back of the wall so it shines down on the backsplash, or you can pull it towards the front. If you can pull it towards the front, it makes a big difference in how it looks. But it's a little trickier. It's not a do-it-yourself usually. It comes with a transformer, and make sure they're dimmable. And then you cut them, but if you connect them, they have to be soldered. So it's not an easy thing to do with those little LEDs. They haven't made it quite simple enough yet. But there's always just those little, they're 18 inches or whatever they are. They're kind of all enclosed one-piece LEDs too that can go underneath the cabinet. They look great too. There's just the two different kinds. And those are going to be less expensive because they're different wiring too. Oh, and then going back to lighting. So then you have like pendant lighting typically over something. I don't know if you have a breakfast bar. If you don't have that, not a big deal. Or a center island. These big center island lights. Lights in general have gotten bigger. So I use this as an example. This was probably, I don't know, 15 plus years ago. I can't even remember. But they were really tiny little lights, if anybody remembers kind of that time frame. Now we're doing lights this big over the same peninsula. They're up a little higher, but they're bigger. Again, it's just a trend. If you don't like them, you don't have to do them. I'll show you an after of something, but I said, you need a bigger fixture over this island, and she said, are you sure? They seem really big. And I said, well, we can put them up, and if you hate them, I'll take it, because I really think that they needed to be bigger. And her family came over, and they said, oh, those are big, and now they went up, and they love them. So bigger ones are just kind of a trend, I would say. Mm-hmm.
There's a very general rule from like the countertops to the bottom of that big light.
Mm-hmm. So it's a minimum 30. Minimum is 30. I would say that most people go 32 to 34. Because you still want to be able to see through it, and 34 for me is about, like, I can see through it. So it's kind of in that little ballpark is kind of what they recommend anywhere. Flooring, lots of options, but this is the one that, so I'm always a natural. I go back to a real floor. We live in Minnesota, and we love our oak. And so there's usually oak somewhere in some of these older homes, whether it just was in the kitchen or if it was just in the entryway. And we can seamlessly go into it. You would never know old from new. It could be 100 years old, and I can put it in a new floor and tie it in, and you would never know the difference. So I'm always a sucker for a real floor, but that's me. Now, can you always do that? No. Sometimes the cabinets are staying. A real wood floor is not ideal because it's pretty thick. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. So if you put a real wood floor on there, your toe kicks kind of get all messed up if you're using the existing cabinetry, things like that. So then we recommend going to a thinner product. So this is the new luxury vinyl that's out. This one seems to be a hot spot right now for people. Comes in a million different patterns. It can look like wood. It can look like tile. It can look like nothing. Just has a weird pattern. It's real thin. There's a benefit to that. Depending, what is this floor going to match up to? You don't want one high and one low and then get these big toe stubbers, that you got to walk over every time. Or they don't hit doorways. If the doorway's set low, you're never going to make the doorway clear. So you got to kind of look at your heights. Will kind of narrow down your flooring. If, in a retrofit or even in a new, you got to look at the doorways. We have one in Maple Grove. The door was too low for what our floor. We did bamboo there. Not bamboo. We did cork there, and the door kept hitting it. So we just took the door out and raised it up. But to give you an idea, there's so many. So we got cork, we got laminate, we got real wood. I think I wrote them all down on that list too. This is remember Pergo? I'm picking on Pergo again. I'm sorry. But this is kind of the new laminate. It's got some texture to it. Versus the big chunky slabs that Pergo was, But it is really pretty. In applications, this is a great option. It takes water pretty decently. It goes down easy, not real thick. But this is always an option too. This is quite a bit more than this. And I can't really tell you why I figured it out. I don't know if it's because this is new and this has been around a while, supply and demand. So this is a luxury vinyl, and this is a laminate. They look the same, don't they? This installed right now, okay, there's different levels, but it's running right around $10 to $12 a square foot installed. This installed is running about $6. This one is actually $5, but it usually is around $6. So there's a big difference between those two. And again, I don't know if it's supply and demand because I don't know why this product would be so much more, but can't tell you. Plumbing fixtures. I'm just going to look at my time here. Yeah, great, doing great. I tried to finish in 45. So, plumbing fixtures. Okay, there's a bunch of them, and I realized I forgot to bring up one sink. We do a lot of stainless steel sinks. It seems to be available. It's good price point, but there is one. They call it a granite type sink. It's made out of granite. And the name brand, and I should have written, I didn't write this on my thing, is Blanco. Blanco's probably, LK makes one, Blanco makes one. I use Blanco the most, just because I like their colors better. But that is one of the easiest way to get a colored sink. Let's say you want black, you want gray, you want, white. They're like the only other option beyond Kohler and buying a fancy, like whatever, and they cost you $1,000. So it's one of the ways to get color without having to use stainless steel is to use one of those options. I ordered them from build.com, which I think I wrote on that first page. But if you need to go to showrooms, there's showrooms available for you. But the trend, I would say, we still are doing some apron sinks. Some people love them, some people hate them. You guys know what I mean by that, where they're in the front. But the one bowl is very popular. I don't know if it would work for my lifestyle and my kids, but I don't know, lately it's been all of them. I do always like that they're squared off a little bit, versus the rounded edges. The square just gives it, again, they're the same price, so why not get something a little bit more trendy? But when you're looking at the back of your sink in today's world, somehow we've gotten a lot of things that have to be up on this. So we used to just do a faucet like that one, and peace, we're done, like easy. Well, now you have a faucet. Required by code is to have what they call an air gap. It's another little doohickey that's got to show up on there. A lot of people are doing filtered water now, so now we've got another faucet. Plus, if it's on an island, you're also going to have a button for the disposal. So you kind of just end up with this lineup of things. And that one has the handle in the faucet, but a lot of them have the handle separate too, so now we've got another hole. So you can have a lot of different spots coming across. All right, so any questions on those? These are all the pieces to a remodel. So, you don't necessarily have to have them all picked out, but you got to think about them because there's always something special that somebody wants. It could be one of those huge faucets, that has the power sprayer to clean dishes. Like sometimes that'll be the ticket. Maybe it'll be an appliance that's super important to somebody. But there's always usually something, and there should be something that's important to you. Maybe it's a tile, maybe it's a type of floor. But yes. Thanks for asking. Cork and bamboo, you bet. So they're both sustainable products to us, although cork is a little bit less now than it used to be, but they're both natural products too, so you got to remember that. This isn't something that's fabricated. They're natural materials, so although they're water resistant, they are not waterproof. We have installed both of them, and I've taken both of them up because one was a dishwasher, one was a refrigerator leaked, existing scenarios, but and they need to be then brought up and replaced. They typically float, which means that you need to have some gapping on the other side so that it can kind of move. Again, natural materials are always going to move a lot more than something that's fabricated. But they're both very good products. Price point, they're pretty reasonable, usually between 8 and 12, depending on which one. I like cork for the differences in the coloring. Bamboo seems to be a little bit more of kind of and it's bamboo, so it kind of has like the dots along the way, and it's more of a constant pattern. It's not so variable. Again, it's a personal. Did I answer your question? Well, like I said, they're softer underfoot, which is a great thing. She asked about durability, but they don't, although they're water resistant, I don't think they take water as easily as maybe like a wood floor, or even a laminated floor. Yeah, those are good questions. If you drop things on the floor and pets and things like that. I'm trying to think of the scenarios where we installed them, and there weren't a lot of those. Their scenario just didn't have that. But I would say it would maybe be more middle ground. I would think there's products, again, but they would typically be a man-made product that are a little bit more resistant or durable in that way. And there would be some that would obviously be less than that too. I think it would be kind of in the middle. The only bad part is if something does get damaged, it's not an easy floor to fix. That's the only bad part about that floor, at least when it's floating. So I'll just cruise through a couple before and afters. So it was just a very odd layout, and they had a dining room and a dinette in this house, and so they got rid of them and went to one big kitchen. Now, some of the things that they wanted, they did not want the cabinets to go to the ceiling, which is always great for more storage, but that's not what they wanted. They wanted soapstone because she was a chef. We added the butcher block built in, but it is removable so they could clean it. You know, it's like we cut out just for the butcher block. But they wanted the big stove. They had a downdraft vent that met all the requirements. And then this whole end is just seating. Because we got rid of a dining room, technically, we needed to make some seating in there. This little space, too, this is one thing to think about when you're planning. This is all cords and outlets in behind here. So this holds all their, and then there's mail slots above it. But it's hidden so that you can't see it. This might be the small, and I don't even have a before of the kitchen, but might be the smallest kitchen I have ever done. This is it. That's all of it right there. So it's pretty compact. Everything is full size. It did really help to do a panel front refrigerator because it was so tight in there. It kind of helped blend it to kind of make it go together. The microwave ended up being on a drawer because we didn't even have a width to do the microwave anywhere. And then because they were a little bit taller cabinets and they were not as tall people, they did like a pull down, you can see in the upper one, so that they would have access to that stuff. But this might be the smallest kitchen ever. This one was in Minneapolis. Not huge, but she did have a wall on the other side, you know, that had room for it. And there's the after. So what you saw before was the peninsula coming right here. If you have kind of this scenario on the ends, you know, you end up with kind of a floating cabinet that does not really connect to anything. So if you don't need the storage roll a ton, the shelves are a great option. This is all still one cabinet. If we made this one cabinet and one cabinet, it would be twice the cost because every cabinet is really about the same price. So making this all one, we just put glass on the top. Saves you money in the long run. This is a before in St. Louis Park. This is where that scenario of whether you take down the wall or not, there was actually a wall right here. So just opening it up, you know, we just put in a header up there. The pluses, minuses were huge to this, just getting rid of it. So I don't know what city everybody lives. This was Minneapolis, and you can see the cabinets didn't go to the ceiling. So do we take out soffits every day of the week? You know, I mean, constantly take out soffits. In this scenario, it was a lot happening behind those soffits. So to kind of counteract it and not have to move plumbing, move a ton of electrical, is we just built the soffit up into wood. You see that? That was our, you know, because you never know what you're going to find when you open things up. But here is actually a split entry, and there's a couple of them, but it's, again, taking down those walls, and you've got some heat and you've got some electrical to move, but it's not the end of the world by any means. But it makes a huge difference to go to an island. An island is such a great use of space if you can make it fit. The rules of thumb, if you're trying to figure it out, your minimum that I would do would be 36 inches from countertop to countertop. And if it's a walkway, like where you're going to have, 42 to 54 is kind of where you want to be. 42 is minimum for if it's kind of that main entryway. So it doesn't fit in a lot of places. Here's another one of taking down walls and moving appliances. I didn't kind of get into this, but I went on and I read a bunch of articles because I'm kind of curious always what other people say about remodeling, versus my own experiences. And I was like, well, if you can keep everything in the exact same location, you'll save money, which is somewhat true. But our code in the state of Minnesota for electrical, if you buy a new refrigerator, we need to run a new circuit for every single appliance that is in that kitchen. And they all have to go back to the main box. And nobody probably has this in their existing house unless you built in the last 10 years. So my point to this is, if I've got to put a new outlet there and run it all the way back to the box anyway, what's the difference if I move the stove over to that side, right? So the only argument of keeping everything in the same spot, unless you're just, you're keeping your existing cabinetry and sliding new appliances in, you don't have to meet the new code. But if you are really truly remodeling a kitchen, everything's got to meet that new code. If you're, if you're going to need inspections for electrical, you're going to need to meet the new codes. So moving stuff around to me it doesn't end up costing any more money for us or you. The only one that variable would be is a gas line would be a variable because you've got to still run a new one then or move that existing one. Or the plumbing. The plumbing can be a little bit tricky. But if it's open from underneath, it's not that hard. Not the end of the world. So this is one where we moved almost everything around and we took out a wall to try to open this up. This is one that had the smaller refrigerator because we were a little short on space. Here is a before. Tiny little kitchen. Oh, lots of little kids. And we just changed again. So what you don't see is behind here and behind this side, so they're flanking each other. This side is a gorgeous new laundry room. This side is a huge walk-in pantry with another refrigerator. So, and all we did was we moved everything forward, that space. And because we went to an island where you're not having 3 sides of cabinetry, we were able to do it. We were actually even able to get in a desk space. You can kind of see it. Like, again, if this was all, and this is just my opinion, and I designed it, so yes, it's going to be, but if this is all white, and it's just kind of the same kitchen running all the way through, it kind of gets a little bit big. And so by putting in a desk area and kind of breaking it down, again, I don't know if desks are the new current trend. I wouldn't probably go to a desk, but you could go to a beverage center, those are very popular right now again, hence why we're doing the liquor cabinet rollouts all the time. Here's my Cambria, my mom's boyfriend. Tiny little sink. The dishwasher's here. And this isn't a small house here. The dishwasher's there, the sink is there, and the garbage is there. I mean, how do you even function? Like, I don't know. I couldn't. This is his new kitchen. Same space. This was where the sink was. So yes, we moved the plumbing, but we had access from underneath. They're just Cambria countertops. But this is a liner. It's just a liner inside that cabinet. Those are actually 2 different cabinets because the ceilings were 10 feet tall. And then instead of just putting a regular door on here, we actually did it in a pantry door. Like we made a cabinet door out of it. And it was an afterthought because if I did it again, I would have brought it up to the same height as the other ones. But it was a last minute kind of switch from the regular door looked dumb. I don't know. Here's a before. This is using an existing cabinet. I don't know if I don't think anybody was here. I just had a previous client come in. I think I told this story partially, but they said we use their existing cabinetry. So where I find people it works the best is if you've got all of a sudden some cabinetry, and then they have like a little end cabinet that they do something else with, and then or they'll have a hutch that is kind of beyond their in the kitchen. So hence like this one had a hutch on this end, and then the kitchen itself, and then I don't know what was here because this is when I got there. This is how this was, where this was missing. So I'm not sure if there was a wall here. Kind of looks like it from that piece up there, but I don't remember what was exactly there. But all we changed were countertops, backsplash, lighting, and added cabinetry. So 4 things. There's the difference in the cabinets. And that's just a quick update. Some of the cabinets that were really worn, we sent back to the cabinet maker, had them sand them down, because we were already making new ones with a new stain to match, so what's the difference? But you can see under cabinet lighting makes a huge difference. This was, again, probably, 15 years ago. But where the hutch was, we got more storage, usable storage, that you could, all those drawers held actually a purpose. Here's a before. This one was in Maple Grove. That one, it got kind of skewed from the picture, but these are actually 9-foot ceilings. So you can see the glass, how much taller it is in this one. That's completely a look, but that's all the same cabinet. And the challenge there was the storage. So we've got 3 pantry doors. They all, again, had a purpose. 2 were food and 1 was storage for big appliances. And then around the corner, around that fridge area, we had an angle, so we made kind of a space to keep paperwork and things like that. Here's another little small U shape. We took down the wall, and it just opened it up to the dining room. So, okay, so I did have a little phone issue this year and lost a phone, so I am missing a lot of befores. So I have the afters, but not the befores. It's a challenge for me. This one is like a multi-level. This was actually in Rogers. You know, I'm sure you've seen the house where you walk in the front door and there's a living room right away, and then the kitchen's behind it, and there's usually like 2 steps down into the family room, going the other direction. So they took out the living room section, and we made the whole thing a kitchen. And again, we trying to separate it out. This is kind of that beverage area, trying to keep it for entertaining, keep everything down on that end. She's a huge baker. So the ovens became front and center. Sometimes we try to push them off, but she was a huge baker, so we needed to kind of keep them intact. But here's a before in Edina. And these are IKEA cabinets. Has anybody thought about doing IKEA cabinets? They're a lot of work. But she wanted this shiny, shiny door, and I couldn't find anybody that could fabricate it. Only IKEA had it. So it was, all right, we're going to go for it. But everything comes in 4-inch increments. So, you know, you end up with some dead space here and there. Nothing can go to the ceiling because they aren't meant to be square with anything. So they never hit the ceiling. Her backsplash, though, it is one of my favorites. That is solid granite. They literally chunked out that pattern that you see, laid like steel, like rope almost, chain. They put chain in there and then filled it all in with an epoxy. It was $182 a square foot. Most expensive one ever done to this day. But it was only that wall. That's it. But it was very cool. I did touch on hardware, and I kind of forget about it sometimes. If you're looking to kind of trend and maybe come up, and you've seen the big hardware like this, I would, that's really big, so you have to be committed. That's more of a contemporary look. But, if you look at, it's a retrofit scenario where they're 3 inches. That's the standard of what we put in for years and years and years, and what you find typically at Home Depot or, again, Menards. I like Menards better, personally. But the 3 inches kind of gone the wayside. I would say like our minimum if you're doing a pull is about 5 inches. So something just to kind of keep in mind. And with these big drawers, I don't know if I have a picture of it, I usually even go to the fact of doing 2 of them, or you can do one huge long one all the way across. But the longer they get, I feel like they get more contemporary. Here's another after because I don't have any befores. This was actually another split entry. So there was a wall. This whole thing was a wall. We just opened it up. This is the one that said the light fixtures were too big. Yes. So I said, put them up. If they don't like them, I'll pay for them. So, yeah, I just think that they needed to be bigger. It's too big of a space, too much. And this one had a high ceiling, too. So here's one more before. And that's kind of, the challenges here were the fireplace was actually brick, so we overlaid it. But the brick went all the way around, so we had to come up with some way to separate it. That's why these go up like that. So it was on both sides to kind of break the brick. She found some tiles that she had taken. She went on a trip to Spain and took back these tiles, and we incorporated them into the whole plan. But this was a wall coming across. And we were able to get a peninsula and the island in this scenario. This is a bigger kitchen, more space. Now, do you guys have any questions? I'm happy to answer anything. I know that was a lot. Hi. Yes.
Okay, about products that are green, is there any way of having that in like laminates?
Do they make a green laminate?
Yes, or anything more green than
Yeah,
green.
I love that you're asking that. I don't know of any. Because typically products that become a little bit more green either have glass, they have something that we recycle. So glass, paper, those type of materials to make them a little bit more green. And I don't know how we would get those products into a laminate itself.
Okay.
There certainly is green countertops with glass and things like that, but they're a little bit higher price point. So typically people don't choose them. I mean, not that they aren't really available, but so I don't know any of those. It's a good question, though. Yeah. Now I'm going to have to look. I know that they even make framing now for cabinetry that instead of using like plywood, it's like recycled plywood. But again, one sheet of plywood for us is $30. Recycled was $100. So to go green, I love it, but you're spending more money that people sometimes aren't willing to. There's a kitchen in here that I didn't get a picture of soon enough. She was allergic to formaldehyde, which is in everything that we have. So we had to buy non-formaldehyde plywood. And that's the only reason I know that is because that was an option, non-formaldehyde and then the recycled. So that was the only reason I knew that. And it was more expensive. It was about double the price to get no glue in there. But it's available. It's in everything, so that's always the bad part. Yeah. Any other questions? I kind of go through it fast because I try not to have you sit here too long. Yeah, ma'am.
You mentioned the code change with the electrical, so if you buy even one appliance, you have to put new circuits for the existing ones too?
Great question, because I think when I said that I didn't make it clear. If you went down to Warner Stellian and your dishwasher died and you bought a new one, you wouldn't have to meet any codes. If you are gutting the whole kitchen and you're putting in all new appliances and new cabinetry, and the walls the drywall is coming down, you're going to need new electrical.
Okay, so if the appliances stay in the same place,
If you replace,
without doing walls, if you're just doing cabinets,
if you do any electrical at all, put an under cabinet light on, you should be pulling a permit, and you're going to have to probably meet the new code.
okay, so if you are going to be doing new ceiling lighting or anything like that, then you're going to have to do.
Then you really should meet that new code.
All right, how much?
I am on camera too, so I'm making sure that I say this politically correct. Yes, you would, because going to the city, so it's even worse. All the cities I work in. So I'm sorry. What was your question?
So
So
what you have just a range of what the electrical to do a small kitchen remodel is, if you're going to be doing new ceiling lighting and then having to do all the electrical.
and all the electrical for the appliances. So typically we end up almost ripping everything out. I know that sounds ridiculous, but what you don't want, and you've probably seen this, is a million junction boxes where you got a box that's wires are coming into and then wires are going off of. It's like a fire hazard. It's not an ideal scenario. Does it happen? Absolutely, but it's not. If you want to, you should be pulling all those wires. It's kind of starting over. So we end up pulling it. So I can tell you what I typically estimate, just if I was going to do it, not doing recessed, but maybe doing those disc cans, because if it's an insulated space, it kind of doubles its price. And then doing some kind of pendant lighting, under cabinet lighting with just the basic fixture, not the LEDs. And then meeting all the code requirements, including the outlets in the right place, because that's another code thing. Usually you're between $3,500 to $5,000. Is that what you thought it would be?
I had no idea.
I'll tell you, these trades make a ton of money. I don't know if anybody has in the trades or has kids in the trades. I told my youngest one, I'm like, I know what you're doing in the future. They do. I mean, electricians, we're short on electricians. We're short on everything. So they are making decent money. And to get a decent one that knows what they're doing and time efficient. I mean, if you're paying one guy 100 and one guy 150, but this guy works twice as fast, who's the better price, right? So that's kind of always how I look at it. But they are, yeah, it's expensive. Now, and there'd be a fine line. You can always contact your city because every city is going to be different. For instance, some cities make us require, whether we do any framing at all, we have to have a building permit. If electrical gets pulled, we got a building permit, whether we touch walls or not. Usually it's if we touch walls. So they're all a little different.
And pulling out soffits, is that touching walls?
Yeah. Because there's probably electrical up there that you're going to have to move. And you're going to have to re-insulate. Yeah. Did you already pull them out?
No, I haven't started.
Opening soffits is like opening like Pandora's box. You just never know what you're going to get. So it's like, oop, there it is. Sometimes we just push a couple holes in there and see if we can see up in there, and then just patch the holes if it's too much of a mess, because you really don't know. So, but I'll be here for a little while. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.